Wrestling towards the line, Jack O'Neill! Doesn't come, and O'Neill's gone for the field goal! Bat it back, O'Neill! Challenge to cut out pass to O'Neill! O'Neill goes in!
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Be the Player podcast. This podcast is for the player, by the player. My name is Jack O'Neill. I'm doing this one solo this week. Of course, I'm back from the Gold Coast. Had a little trip away, just to try and refresh. Unfortunately, that didn't quite happen. It was a pretty poor performance from myself during the week for Canberra, but we will get into that one. We've got a huge show lined up for you guys today. This will probably be the longest podcast we've done yet. I will go through the mines. We will review and preview all the games that we'll review the games that were happened earlier in the week, and we will preview the games happening this coming round in week 2 of the SRL mines. It'll be pretty brief. I didn't watch them as closely as I do the SRL games, but it's important to keep you guys updated and build some hype around some of these awesome young players coming through the ranks. Well, of course, as always, going to do my review and my preview, but this is what everybody's been looking forward to. Player signings have opened on this week's agenda. I will go through every single player signing and every player on the player agency and give my thoughts on that. And I will also go through my ladder. I want to go through my ladder. I want to show you guys how I think it's going to end up for the rest of this season. And of course, I've got my Q&A that I set up with you guys, ask for your questions, so we're going to go through those as well. So it is an absolutely stacked show here. Make sure you stick around for the entirety of the podcast and let me know your thoughts and share your opinions in the comment section down below. But without further ado, let's head into the Mines Wrap. Yeah, it was a big week for all of our new Mines players. Their competition did launch on Monday night with 2 action-packed games. It was really entertaining footy. I really enjoyed it. We had 2 games of the Nines Rugby League rule set, and we saw some really good footy and some really promising players. First up, the Firehawks took on the Stingrays. The Stingrays, they proved to be too strong for the Firehawks, having a very dominant victory. One thing that I noticed about the Stingrays is they're a very fast side. Their pace was way too much for the Firehawks. Of course, led by their back 3, Connor Huddleston, Chase Williams, and Jimmy Musa. Those guys were really strong. They caused a lot of headaches for the Firehawks and a lot of fatigue. Guys like Huddleston, he's really on a lot of SRL clubs' radars, but I do think he is all but set to head to the Canberra Raiders. Chase Williams, I haven't heard too much about Chase, but he was really solid in that game as well. But Jimmy Musa, I think he played fullback for them. He's the guy on everyone's lips. He's the guy that is sort of starting to excite the SRL a little bit, and he's got a couple clubs sniffing around him. I believe he's actually a relative of Broncos player Coda Diab, so an interesting one and an interesting player to keep an eye on. As I said, fatigue set in really early for the Firehawks. They just were not able to keep up with a really fast Stingray side that also boasts guys like Tia Chapman, I think, who is a really promising youngster. But, there were some positives. Anthony McDonald was really strong in the forwards for the Firehawks. I think he crashed over for a try at one stage. So, the Firehawks, they can definitely bounce back from this, but the Stingrays were way too classy. The other game, the Swarm took on the Gunslingers, and this was looking like it was going to be a close game for a little while. The Swarm, they showed a lot of defensive resilience throughout the first half. There were a lot of try savers. They had to do a lot of defense, which is really hard, especially in the Mines rule set, or the Nines rule set, sorry, the Nine-a-side Rugby League. And they looked really good until eventually they cracked. And from there, all that defensive work they had to do for the first, I think, about 5 minutes of the 9-minute half just came back to bite them. And the pressure was too much, and the Gunslingers, they look relentless. Their attack is really strong. They they play a really, really frantic pace. They're one of those teams that looks like they're just going to come at you at a million miles an hour the whole game. And the Swarm handled that pretty well to begin with, but it just got too much for them. So they must be a pretty fit team. Their completion rate was really high as well, the Gunslingers. And yeah, like I said, their attack looked really dangerous, so there's a lot to look forward to for this Gunslinger side. Now the Firehawks, they take on the Gunslingers that we were just talking about. Of course, Firehawks coming off that big loss to the Stingrays, and the Gunslingers dominant win over the Swarm. Now, the Firehawks really couldn't handle the pressure of the Stingrays, especially their speed, like I mentioned before. So they have a really tough task against a team like the Gunslingers who play that really high tempo, high attacking football. So I think that I just don't think they're going to be able to keep up with the Gunslingers. I think the Gunslingers will handle them 13 plus. And then the other game, the Stingrays take on the Swarm. Now we mentioned the Stingrays. They were really, really strong, but they came against a side that didn't show nearly as much defensive resilience as the Swarm did. The Firehawks didn't show any defensive resilience really against the Stingrays, but the Swarm did against the Gunslingers, so it's going to be a really interesting contest. Like I said, the Swarm, they stayed in the game early against the Gunslingers, but fatigue just set in. I wonder if maybe there'll still be a bit of a hangover from that. They'll still be a bit tired. I think it'll be really close for a while because I think the Swarm will hold on again, but the Stingrays, again, their speed will be too much. I think it's between them and the Gunslingers for the Mines Championship at the moment, and I think the Stingrays will win 13 plus. Righto, let's head into the agenda. Yes, what a weekend it has been in the SRL so far. I'm recording this podcast at 10 to 5 on Saturday the 6th. We've had a couple big signings announced so far this morning, and I'm really hyped to go through them. I also want to go through the free agents as well. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a sneak preview on how I think Season 4 might pan out with some of these signings. There's some really, really big ones. Some teams have really, really managed their salary caps well, and I could see some of those bottom teams shooting up to the top. Let's get straight into it. I might go through some of the free agents first before I talk signings. For the Broncos, they have released 2 players so far who have not found a club that we know of or that have been announced. That is Tomo Mack in the centres. Now, I've actually liked a lot of what Tomo has done. He's had a couple pretty solid performances recently. I don't think he was really performing to his potential earlier in the season, but I do think he's turned it on now, knowing that he obviously is missing out on a club. So he's someone to keep an eye on, that's for sure. I don't think he will be heading to the Mines. I think someone will pick him up. Another guy from the Broncos that will be departing Redfern is Jason Farah. Now, that's an interesting one. Jason, of course, he was not too long ago one of the really solid players in the SRL, but he's fallen off a cliff this year, if I'm honest. He's playing lock this week, but we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But he was at the Warriors. They let him go. He went to Brisbane, and I honestly thought Brisbane would play a lot better than they did this season. I thought he was going to be a huge part of it. He's gotten into himself into a little bit of trouble off the field, which definitely hasn't helped his hopes around the club. I think he's fallen out of favour a lot. We saw Coda Diab take his hooker spot. Jason was then playing a bit of a bench role. Now he's playing lock, but that's mainly due to the injury to Lennox Prakash. So, it definitely is the right decision by both parties to split up. Where does Jason fit? There isn't really too many clubs that I think could use his services. Maybe Penrith off the top of my head. They have Mark Lee there, but I like Mark Lee in the halves. It'll be interesting. I can't really think of any other clubs that could really use Jason Farah. I think most clubs have got pretty consistent hookers. Maybe Jason Farah could make a move. Maybe back to the Warriors, but the Warriors probably think that ship has sailed, or maybe Parramatta could use Jason's services. It's a really interesting one. Parramatta, speaking of them, have released 3 players. Jaden White has been released. He struggled for form recently. I'm not too surprised that the Parramatta Eels have decided to let him go. I'm not sure who they've signed in the halves, actually. We'll have a look at that later. But, it's an interesting one. He's done a good job at hooker in the past few weeks. I think that's where he's been playing. But I think it probably was another strong decision from Luke Short. He's obviously cleaning the club out and he's doing a really solid job. He signed some big players that we, again, will get into in a moment. Damien Shelford, that's a tough one. I wonder if maybe he isn't as active as the captain, Luke Short, would want, because he's been playing pretty solid. He moved into that fullback jersey, which is always hard. That Parramatta fullback jersey is so crucial to their side, and he performed pretty admirably. He's out of that jersey this week. Eli Barnes has taken that spot back. But I would have probably kept him around the club, but there could be mitigating circumstances. I'm not too sure. I'm not too involved in Parramatta. And the last one, Mark Hunt. Marky, he's played okay. He was brought in by Eli Barnes as one of the rookies who signed up during the off-season. But again, I think Luke Short's building something pretty special there at the moment. And obviously Mark Hunt isn't hitting his plans. The Rabbitohs, the one guy they have released, Dawson Swarm. He is a primary fullback. I haven't seen much of Dawson. I'm not really sure how good of a player he is. I think that maybe some time in the mines would suit him, just so that he can upgrade, play at a bit of a lower level and get some confidence and then come back into the top grade, maybe halfway through Season 4 or into Season 5. Now, the Raiders, we have released 2 players. Dominic Toretto, a winger. He's played pretty good footy the past few weeks, but we've got some pretty big signings coming, so he just didn't fit into our plans. And the other guy without a club is Jonty McGuinnesskin, a close friend of mine. He's a good dude. If you're looking for a consistent upgrader and just a consistent player, Jonty is definitely the man. Unfortunately, we just couldn't fit him in the salary cap when we wanted the players that we wanted to get. Moving on into the player signings, this is where things get interesting. We're going to start off with Manly, and they have made 3 signings, and they are some pretty huge signings. Lennox Prakash is returning to the Manly Sea Eagles after a stint at Brisbane. It's an interesting one. Lennox, he was at South Sydney as well. I think he was at Manly in Season 1. I could be mistaken though. Someone let me know in the comments. But he hasn't played terribly this year, but he definitely hasn't played to his potential. He missed out on an Origin side. He's definitely been better since then. But, heading to Manly, where they have a really strong forward pack already, is a good decision for him, for his career. They've, of course, losing Jackson Allison, so he'll slot in the second row. So I can't fault that decision by either parties, or 3 parties. Brisbane, they needed to probably make a couple of changes. Lennox was getting in a bit of trouble off the field, so this is Lennox's chance now to prove his worth to representative sides. I think he played for us, for the Australians, off the bench, or maybe he was just in the squad. I can't remember, but this could be the move. With Matty Harris and Jesse Bennett at the club, this could be the move that really ignites Lennox's career. Jason Laumu, he's making the move from South Sydney to Manly. He was going to sign with Canberra, but salary cap let us down there, unfortunately, so Jason has made the move to Manly instead. And one thing that I will get into a little bit more in the review and previews is that, to be honest, Manly don't have that much strike in their backline apart from Chaz Dingo, and it's something that's a bit concerning for me, for them, but the signing of Laumu is huge for them. He's got strike, he is a classy player, and I think that is a great pickup for the Manly club. Wow, I really am taking a while to get through these. I'll try and speed it up a little bit. Hayden Melhurt leaving Penrith and heading to Manly. Good decision for both parties again, or for all 3 parties. Melhurt needs a bit of a change, and I think Penrith need a bit of a change. As for Manly, again, they're obviously losing some class due to salary cap constraints. And hey, Melhurt's a solid forward. So I can't fault them at all for making that decision. I think Melhurt is going to probably go to the next level at the club too, to be honest. Manly get the best out of just about every single player that leaves the club. So, good signing there of the second rower. Next signing, we are going to head into some of Brisbane's signings, and wow, honestly, they could be. The Cowboys were my premiership dark horses this year. Brisbane are really shaping up to be my premiership dark horses next year. Mark Iron, we know how good he can be. He's really struggled at Canberra. He has not had a good season, but not many of us have. I haven't really helped him out with my play in the halves, so he needed a fresh change. We needed a fresh change, and obviously we signed a pretty handy fullback ourselves, so this is a good move for Mark. He won't play fullback. He'll be behind Semi Herban, obviously, but he could play centre or 5/8 for them. Maybe he's the answer for the halves. If he gets a full preseason under his belt with Levi Raymond, then he could be so dangerous. But if not, the centres, he'd really suit their centres because they've got some other big outside backs coming. Bo Sadler, that is the huge one. He is so good. He's such a good team player. He's an absolute mongrel, an absolute dog out there. And we have really missed him at Canberra this season. He's been great for Manly, but I think salary cap constraints have forced him out, and that is a big acquisition for the Brisbane Broncos. For me, their biggest signing. They've obviously signed Simon Hunt as another. He's going to be a good forward option, and they've signed Joey Kelly. He's obviously huge. He's one of the best Broncos there's been in the SRL, but Bo Sadler is by far and away the best signing that they have gotten. But they haven't just got Joey. They've obviously let go of Michael Crimp, which I was a bit worried about, but they've added Luka Moscow from the Cowboys. That's a huge signing. They've got both Queensland wingers on their edges now. Brisbane look the goods. They've also got Semi Lillard. I really rate Samuel. He hasn't had his best season. His best footy definitely was last season for Canberra, but definitely look out for the Brisbane Broncos next season. Have a bit of money on them for the premiership. They'll be long odds, and it might just be worth it. Now, the Penrith Panthers, they've signed 4 players. Luke Malchus from Canberra. Luke, he's a representative forward. He's had a couple pretty lean years. He probably, he hasn't performed the way he would like, and that is a shame. But he's so class. He's so class, and he's such a tough competitor. We all know what Luke Malchus brings every time he plays, so I think it's a pretty good pickup overall for Penrith, and definitely someone that they needed signing-wise and culture-wise. He's going to be great for their leadership group. A couple of other interesting signings for Penrith. They've grabbed the South Sydney halves in Ash Crutcher and Isaac Edwards. They've lacked a bit of stability there, and they'll bring that, so that's a good pickup for them for sure. And Cameron Relentless, hopefully he can get a consistent run in the front row for Penrith and show what he can do, so I'm happy with that signing as well. Moving on now to the Warriors. They've only made the one signing, and that is Rex Slattery. Warriors forwards haven't been that bad this year, but you can always improve. So I don't think it's the worst signing. I think Rex is going to do a good job for them. It's a bit out of the blue to me. I think that they probably wanted to try and target a strike centre. Maybe they are still, because obviously they've only released one player and signed one player. So maybe they're just backing the guys that are there to do a job. But I reckon a guy like Laumu would have been perfect for them. Excuse me if I get this wrong, but Tyra Maxwell, he's left to the Warriors. He's heading to the Cowboys as their loan signing so far. Solid replacement for Luka Moscow. Obviously, he is a really tough player to replace, but yeah, I think he's probably one of the best options on the market that they could have got. There's a couple of other guys available who we're going to get to in a moment, because one of them has signed for South Sydney, and it's a big signing, but an interesting decision. Now, Tyler Clay is headed to South Sydney from Manly. There's 2 other Manly players that have been released as well. Joshua Butterfield to the Rabbitohs as well. He obviously just couldn't fit under the cap, so Will Kay will likely be the half for Manly moving forward. And Jackson Allison, he is on the move again. He moved from Brisbane to Manly. He hasn't quite hit his straps again this season, but he's been in a winning side. That's probably what has kept the pressure off him. He was under a lot of pressure at Brisbane last year, mainly because they weren't performing. So he's going to head to South. Good pickup again. Hayden Davis will help with that forward pack again. He's probably going to come in and replace Rex Slattery, which is a good decision. James Thorne, that's a huge one. We could talk about this one for a while. James Thorne, he's been really out of form since, probably since halfway through last season. I rated him as one of the best halves in the game before that, but he really has come unstuck recently, and the change was needed. And I think he would have had a big heart-to-heart with Lockheed Martin, and they would have come up with this decision together, and it's a good decision. Now, we've got two other former Panthers heading to South Sydney. Jack Cahill from Brisbane. I think that's the right move for Cahill's career. He'll obviously, I would say he'll play off the bench, but they've teased this one a bit, South. They've been talking about they've got this big plan on how they're going to fit Liam Ryan, Jack Cahill, James Thorne, and Joshua Butterfield all into this team. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. I don't think Cahill can't play in the centres. It's an interesting one, but Cahill, I assume, will just come off the bench, or maybe Butterfield might play hooker. I'm not sure, but they've got O'Hare there too. So yeah, I would play Cahill off the bench, and I think he wants that. I think he wants a bit of stability. He's the type of kid that the Mines would have been perfect for. Unfortunately, the Mines weren't enacted when he first joined the SRL, but he is a solid player. And the last guy, Josh Saddle-Cart, heading from Penrith to Redfern. Good solid pickup. He's played some okay footy. His defence needs work, but he's still raw, but he's got a lot of X factor. We saw that in the trials where he scored some really good, sensational tries. Now, the Parramatta Eels, so far they've signed 3 players, but each one, for me, are big signings. Cherry Evans, he's struggled a little bit this season. I don't think he should be in the halves. I think his best position is either the centres or off the bench. But, he's played for Australia. He's played for the Maroons, so bit of experience, exactly what Parramatta needed. Michael Crimp. Now, they've lost Joey Kelly, but to bring that guy in, that guy with so much X factor similar to Joey Kelly, is a perfect like-for-like replacement for me. So Parramatta have made a good decision with that pickup. And the last one, Thomas Mendonca. He needed a bit of a change. Obviously hasn't scored in quite some time. Struggling a little bit. Heading to Para is exactly what he needs for me. He'll have Michael Crimp there. Michael Crimp will take a lot of pressure off him and he'll be able to play some natural footy. And the last 2 signings that have been announced so far, Eli Barnes and Jordan Williams, will be heading over to my Canberra Raiders. Eli Barnes, that's a huge signing. We've missed a strike fullback. Mark Iron hasn't quite been able to fill that position for us this year, unfortunately. So I think Eli will come, take a bit of pressure off the halves. And the halves, we should hopefully take a lot of pressure off him as well. We've already got his mate Tim James, so we should be able to form a pretty solid connection. And the other guy, Jordan Williams, he's going to be not a like-for-like replacement between him and Malchus, but he's a really strong mobile forward. I'm really interested to see how we're going to play him, but I think that it's the move that Jordan Williams needed, and I think that we're a good club for him to come to try and step up in the SRL and hopefully get a leadership position in the coming seasons. That is all the player signings from the free player agency so far. There's been some big signings. Like I said, I'm really excited about the Broncos signings. Let me know what signings you're most looking forward to and which ones you're not. Which ones do you guys think, I'm not too sure about that pickup for that club? Let me know in the comment section down below. But without further ado, let's head straight into our Round 6 review and Round 7 preview. Yes, the second last round of the competition is done and gone. There was some really entertaining footy this weekend, and it became just a little bit clearer who will be in our final series come the end of next week. Now, for the first 2 games, I, of course, was in the commentary box. I've got a lot to say about the second game, but let's talk the first game. The Warriors, they defeated the Broncos in a really entertaining clash. The Warriors, they were really strong. I expected this game to go down to the wire, but the Warriors, they just reaped the rewards for a committed performance. They were committed for the full 80 minutes. No, they weren't clinical by any means. They did win by a lot, don't get me wrong. But they showed that they have a lot of weaknesses that they need to sort out, mainly in their playmaking. But they were just committed. You saw how much it meant to them, whereas the Broncos really turned it on and then really turned it off, whereas the Warriors were on the whole time. I think when the Broncos were on, they were on more than the Warriors, if that makes sense. But the Warriors were on full 80 minutes, whereas the Broncos could not sustain that at all. So the Warriors really sustained their energy and their enthusiasm the whole game. They really managed their gas tanks a lot better than the Broncos. The Broncos, they're going to really rue their poor game management. The Warriors' game management wasn't great either. But if the Broncos had have had some really strong game management, then they would have beat the Warriors for sure, because the Warriors were not doing a good job in controlling that game, in my opinion. But this is the Broncos' problem all season, is that they've chopped and changed their halves. They haven't been able to gain or create any type of, I guess, fluency. They keep changing who should be their half. Like, they're just becoming too reliant on X factors. They're just too reliant on Sam Herbert or Michael Crimp to do something amazing, or Pete Veretto to come up with an inspiring run. They're not building pressure. They're not sustaining pressure. And then the issue is, it's because of that, the spine. They are not consistent with their spine. They've got Levi Raymond, Cherry Evans, Jack Cahill, and Sam Herbert have all spent time in the halves this season. And those are just 4 guys off the top of my head. Oh, excuse me. There could be a lot more than that. But I think it's just those 4 guys. And then they were already having trouble with the halves, and they signed Jack Cahill. But I think signing Jack Cahill just complicated the side more, because Cahill just gave them another option when they just needed to just pick some halves and stick with them. Cahill now is coming off the bench and playing centre. It's just not working at Brisbane at the moment. And he's come on and played centre, I think, twice in the last 2 weeks, like two weeks in a row. I don't think Cherry Evans is a half, personally. I think that Cherry has got to play either in the centres or off the bench. I think Jack Cahill's now leaving, and so is Cherry Evans. So Levi Raymond is going to need a new halves partner. I think Mark Iron will take that. But you've got to give Levi Raymond a consistent half partner for the rest of the season, especially if you want to play finals. You can't go week 1 of the finals, Levi, this is your halves partner, but now we're going to change it the week after, especially after they won. They beat Parramatta. It was not convincing, but they did win. But then they changed the halves again. They're overcomplicating it too much, Brisbane. And I think that really let them down. It's the fact that Levi Raymond has no stability around him. Cherry Evans and Jack Cahill and Sam Herbert, when he was moved there in the second half, I think the game before Parramatta, from memory. It's just making Levi's job too hard. And it's too hard on those halves too. Those halves should not have to get chopped and changed. It just gives them no stability and no confidence, because they're not being backed to do that job. That's my opinion anyway. The finals hopes for both teams. The Broncos are in a lot of trouble now, but the good news is for them is that they're now even with the Warriors on 6 points. And the Warriors play Manly next week, and the Broncos play Souths. I know which team I would rather be playing if I was Brisbane. So, they're still within a chance, but they just need stability in their side. Some top performers for me, David Barner. 193 metres and he made 12 tackles, but it was his defence for me that really set him apart. He only made 12 tackles, but it was his effort off the ball. It was chasing Michael Crimp, shutting him down. He shut down Michael Crimp after he ran absolute circles around Parramatta. It was an awesome performance from Barner. The other guy I want to talk about, Isaac Simons, 209 run metres, 2 tries, and those 2 tries were very, very crucial ones. And he's obviously been under a lot of criticism and copped a lot of flack for not being able to manage those big moments. I'm thinking Nathan Cleary or something like that. He's been criticised for not being a strike centre and probably not providing enough attacking, potency and attacking opportunities, which has probably let the Warriors down because the defence has been so good. But he really silenced the critics for me, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how we can build on that for the rest of the season. And then some other notable performers I had, Patrick Corcoran, Chance Bunce, Logan Strange, and Nico Awateri. I thought all those guys did a really good job. It was just a really good Warriors team performance. As for Brisbane, I thought Coda Diab was strong. He had a try assist, so his hooker play is really starting to improve. And he also made 25 tackles, so he's been really solid defensively in the middle as well. As well as that, I had Pete Veretto. I thought he had some big moments. He tried his best for that side like he always does. 119 running metres. He's always inspiring with that, and 24 tackles. I thought Jordan Ford and Jack Spillane also had very, very strong performances. Now the next game, the Rabbitohs and the Raiders. The Rabbitohs, of course, won this game. It was a really poor performance from Canberra. I'm going to get into that. I do want to praise the Rabbitohs before I absolutely lose my mind. The Rabbitohs' game management was really, really good. Isaac Edwards and Ash Crutcher kicked really well. They kicked to corners and they defended beautifully. I think they had about 60% of the ball. I think even more, 62% it might have been, which is, I haven't really seen that in the SRL at all. So they were really dominant. They did a good job of keeping the Raiders in their own half, which is where we were. We were working it out of our half so much, and it was just too much for us. But I'll tell you what, we made it so hard on ourselves. We made 10 errors. 4 of them, we conceded 4 penalties. I made 3 errors. My performance was absolutely disgraceful. But cheap meters defensively, we would do something really good. We would have a really, really good set. I would make a really good kick, whether it's myself, Lukey, or Fitu getting in and kicking, or Tim James out of dummy half. And then we'd miss a really soft tackle on the edge or in the middle. Usually it was Liam Ryan that was causing us all sorts of headaches. We'd miss a soft tackle. We'd be right back where they started. They'd kick us into a corner and we'd have to work it out again. And then the tries that we let in were absolutely poor as well. First try to Jai Collins. It was just soft defence from Corey Bell. Jamming in when he didn't need to. Stupid read. And I don't want to bash Corey because I'm the one who's been backing Corey all season. But he's a senior player, realistically. He's still young, but we need better from Corey. But we needed better from a lot of other players in that game too. That try that we let in to Jake Tuss, I think it was, where he just kicked the ball to himself, picked it up, crashed over the line. That's just pathetic. It was just a disgraceful performance. I love the Canberra jersey. I live for that jersey. And we absolutely just let it down. It was such a bad game. Because even though South were dominant, we gave them that. 10 errors. 4 penalties. We gave away 4 penalties. I barely see more than 2 penalties given away in the SRL. We gave away 4. 6 handling errors, and I made half of them because I just bagged Corey for his defence and making stupid reads. But my game management was not good enough. I made some good kicks. My long kicking was okay. But no points came off me. That's not good enough for me either. So don't think I'm only bagging the team, and I'm saying it's all their fault, because it's not. I was absolutely disgraceful as well. My performance was not good enough. As a senior player, I let down the team. I feel terrible for the way I played. And I hope everybody else in our team has had a good look at themselves this week, because we still can play finals if things go our way. We play Penrith, who are struggling, but at least I see spirit when Penrith play. I didn't see that much spirit. I saw spirit in patches by certain players, but it was not good enough by me. I think I was the worst player on the field that night. I will not, I bagged, like I said, I bagged Corey, and to be honest, I wish I could backtrack on that. I probably shouldn't have, but that's going to go in this, because I'm just going to be honest. This podcast is me being honest. I've called Corey out, I've called me out. There are other really poor performers. Mark Iron hasn't performed well this year. He was really building into that game. We probably shouldn't have subbed him off, but I think it was cruel that we kept him in the fullback jersey for that long. We should have made changes earlier in the season. And I'm just so disappointed in that whole game. I'm disappointed in my performance. I'm disappointed in just the team. We just weren't good enough. I had some good moments, like I said, but we need to be better. We need to be so much better if we're going to get out of any of this. We've signed some good players, and they'll come in and provide what we need. I don't want them to feel like, oh, I don't know what I'm getting into, because we're a good club. We have good players. We have a good mindset. We have hard-working people here. We don't see that game very often. That game and the Cowboys game in round 1 were really, really poor. The rest of the season, we've played pretty well. I've been pretty happy with it. But it's this game and round 1 that we need to get rid of. We bounced back really well after round 1 against the Eels. So hopefully we can do the same thing again. Because we need to bounce back for our fans, for our season, for ourselves, for some pride, for the jersey, for the club. It was not good enough. Anyway, I want to talk about the Rabbitohs. We'll give some of their players a rap. I thought Liam Ryan, he was relentless in that game. I think that was one set. He had 3 runs in one set. He had 217 run meters. He made 8 line breaks. That's probably his best game of the season at fullback, which is really good to see because, like I said earlier, I said he needs to step up if South's going to go to the next level because every team that is doing well has got that absolute gun fullback, and he's really starting to build into that mould. Aaron O'Hare, 30 tackles, 1 miss. He was really, really strong. You know, sometimes hookers can be a bit of a liability in the middle with big man running at them, but Aaron did not take a backward step, and he deserves a lot of praise for that. And I thought Jake Dranigan and Talis Riff were both really strong as well. For the Raiders, it's really hard to pick some people, to be honest, but I thought Dom Toretto had some really good runs. He ran for 184 metres. He was consistent. He's had a really pretty good start to his SRL career. He's a free agent now, obviously, so he would value any club really well. Tim James, his first game as a Raider, he made 28 tackles and only missed 1. He was really, really strong. So good job, Timmy. And I had Fitu and Jacob Morrison, I thought, were also really, really strong. Let's get into the next game now. The Seagulls and the Cowboys was a top of the table clash. And the Seagulls, they proved that they still are the top dogs in the competition. Cowboys, they're building. They are building. And I'm going to get into it in a minute. But the Seagulls, talk about them first. They just flex their premiership muscles once more. Like, they're a good side. We know how good they are. And they got up for this game and they were never going to give up. The effort that is always there. And it was just a good performance from them. I want to talk about their halves. This week they've named Will Kay and Joshua Butterfield. But I don't know who their best half combination is. Will Kay, Joshua Butterfield and Kyle Lewis. With Butterfield leaving next year, do you say, okay, we're going to let Kay and Lewis lead the team? Or do you say, no, our focus right now is the Premiership. We're going to back Butterfield. And who's the other one? Kay or Lewis? I'm just going to check to make sure that they did name, that I am correct, and they did name Will Kay in the halves of Joshua Butterfield. They did. I'm really perplexed. Kyle Lewis is a Queensland level half. They must have rounded their team a lot just to give players rest and to give players opportunities in other positions, but I just don't know if benching Kyle Lewis is the right call. I would have Kyle Lewis in there with Will Kay or Joshua Butterfield personally. I'd probably go Butters simply because he was there to start the season. You got to keep that consistency. It's what I bagged the Broncos for. It's an interesting one. Anyway, the game. It was 18-12 at halftime. It was building really nicely. The Seagulls looked in control, but the Cowboys were not giving up. You could see they were just sticking it to him. But the second half was so good to watch. Honestly, it was a grind. It was classic rugby league. Manly won the second half 8-0. But it was just an absolute grind. Kane Chapman-Kenny was obviously injured. But the Cowboys could have benefited off of Kane Chapman-Kenny's injury or used that, but their discipline just let them down big time. I think they gave away about 3 penalties in that second half, all for holding down in the tackle, which I get it. You're in the grind and you've got to try and wrestle momentum, but you've got to keep your discipline. And it was Captain Chris Lord as well who ended up being the man to be sin-binned. And so now he's facing a suspension. He's got to be better. He's got to keep his discipline. He's got to lead by example. Lockie Martin said it in commentary. It wasn't good enough. And I do agree with him. But I do think the Cowboys will definitely learn from this game. I think that they're really building well towards finals because you don't have to beat Manly now. You got to beat them in the grand final. That's Manly will most likely be in that grand final. That's when it counts, when you meet them in finals. They'll be meeting in 2 weeks' time in week 1 of the finals. That's when they've got to be up. But one thing that I do want to talk about, and I talked about it when I talked about the signing of Laumu, but right now, do Manly have enough backline stripe? I'm going to get up their backline, but they have such a stacked forward pack that I think that maybe their backs aren't quite up to standard when, you look at Chaz Dingo, obviously, like he's the strike player of the competition, but you've got Kane Chapman-Kenny, who's obviously benched this week due to injury, but you've got Tyrone Clay and Malachi Booth. Clay is probably underperforming a little bit, to be honest. Past few weeks, he was really good to start the season. But it's Malachi Booth, Maverick Oldfield, Joshua Blackburn. Is that the backline's going to win you a premiership? I'm not too sure. There's nothing against those guys. I think that if you had, for Blackburn and Oldfield, if they went to another club, they would do really well if they had a strike centre next to them. The issue is that I don't see either of them as strike centres. I see them both as just solid defensive centres. But then, with that all being said, you look at that forward pack. This week it's Brad Goodwin, Bo Sadler, Matthew Harris, Jackson Allison, Daniel Punch, and Jesse Bennett as the 8 to 13. And then their bench is pretty handy too, but that is such a good forward pack. That's almost criminal. They're so hard to beat, which is why they were so good in that grind. And it's why Cowboys kept trying to wrestle momentum through holding down, if I'm honest. I want to talk about some really good performers. Kane Chapman-Kenny. He ran for 388 metres in 54 minutes before he went off. That was, could you say it's the best game of his career? No other games are really standing out to me as other games that he was that good in. Or that he, he wasn't that good, but he was that good in. So he was heading straight towards the all-time run meter record, which I can get up now, but yeah, it's good to see, because obviously Kane, he struggled in Origin, it just wasn't a good, time for him, because it didn't look like he was enjoying his footy, if that makes sense, in Origin, which is a weird thing to say, but he didn't look comfortable there. I think that's probably because it was a different environment, maybe a bit of a step up for him. He's played there before, he's played rep footy before, but I think he'll be better now for this season. I think he'll go back into Origin a much better player. No, so the record for running meters was Eli Barnes with 530 meters. Don't know if he was going to get that, but you never know. The other top performer, Will Kay, he had 1 try and 1 try assist. He was really, really strong, Kay. And that's probably the issue. And I didn't really think about that when I went on about whether Butterfield Lewis or Kay should be the halves. Will Kay played so great that it's so hard to keep. You can't keep him out of the side. And so Kyle Lewis is the man to miss out. But if you have to have Will Kay in, then you've still got to have Kyle Lewis in, because he's the guy next year, as far as I know. So it's an interesting one. And of course, I've had Jackson Allison and Chaz Dingo as 2 other notable performers. Now, for the Cowboys, Callum Irwin, I thought that was one of his better games of his career. He had 142 run meters and scored a try. He was really good. Tyler Almatagi, really building towards being a top 3 fullback if he isn't already. But he ran for 139 meters, but he made 23 tackles. That is such a good effort for a fullback. And it obviously took a lot of sting out of him, and Manly did really well to shut him down. But 23 tackles from a fullback, and he still ran for 139 metres. That's a sensational knock from Tyler. And of course, notable performers, I've got Damien Moana and Thomas Wallace as well. I think Thomas, did he move to lock? No, I think he's moving to lock this week. My apologies. But the last game of the round, the Penrith Panthers took on the Parramatta Eels. Penrith, they were really, I wouldn't say they're really strong, but they were committed. They were down 12-0 at one stage, then 18-8. And they came back to lead 20-18. Then Para snatched the lead, and then they're on the charge. Lachlan Martin's off injured. And They got a penalty in front of the sticks. They took the 2 at 24 to 20. They were down by 4, and there was a minute left. And, if Lachlan Martin's on the field, that doesn't happen. Mark Lee's the other leader on the field, so I wonder if he made the call. I'm not sure he made the call, but it was not a good decision at all. One thing about Penrith, their resilience has been first class. They just haven't been able to sustain it for the whole game, but they are such a resilient side. They just fade out during games, and it lets them down big time, and then they call the way back, and then they'll fade out again. They'll do something silly, and it's disappointing, especially for a guy like Lockie. He works so hard to get that side going the way he wants them. As for Parramatta, they've got really slim finals hopes, but they kept them alive because they got out of jail big time. They were lucky Penrith took that tap. They probably would have didn't take the tap. Sorry, they probably score. I'm pretty confident to say I reckon they would have found the try line if they took the tap, because Parramatta it was a pretty poor performance from them. But they had some really good performers in that game again. Damien Shelford, he ran for 222 metres at fullback, which is a really good knock from him. And he scored a try as well. He's been moved to the halves, which I'm not too sure about, but, he's obviously leaving the club at the end of the season anyway. As for Samuel Atchison, he made 26 tackles in his first game as an Eel. I think? Yeah, I think that was his first game. So, great knock for Semi. Jaden White, Eli Barnes, I thought both had pretty solid games as well. As for Penrith, Brodie Kennedy, man, 193 metres, 2 tries and an assist. He was in everything for Penrith. He kept them in it. Had a hand in 3 out of 4 tries. I think 3 out of 4? No, 3 out of 3. They only scored 3 tries, didn't they? I think so, yes. Sorry, my apologies, guys. But, yeah, just players like that, he just deserved the win. He didn't deserve to be on the losing side that night, in my opinion. And Mark Lee, he made 29 tackles. Another just consistent game from him, back in the hooking jersey. I think he's a better halfback, but, Lockie Martin's obviously got a plan. He's signed some really solid halves, so I like what Penrith are building. They've got a good mindset. They've got a good attitude. They just need some strike. They need some class, and they need some controlling halves. And I think that, with Isaac Edwards and Ash Crutcher going there, they can go to the next level next season. Anthony Delaney and Hayden Melhurt were my other notable performers from this game for Penrith. Without further ado, let's head straight into this week's preview. We have got a massive round of footy this week. Let's get straight into it. I don't want to talk about this for too long. This podcast is going for ages. But the Manly Seagulls take on the New Zealand Warriors. The Warriors, they're playing for their finals position. They can lock it up with the biggest upset of the season if they beat Manly in this game. Whereas Manly, they're currently arguably the most dominant side in SRL history. Broncos, Season 1, finished 6-1, minor premiers, bowed out Week 1. Parramatta, Season 2, they were 6-1, bowed out Week 1 of the finals. So, if Manly want to change history, they might want to win this game and be 7-0. No team has ever finished the regular season undefeated, and no team has ever finished with the minor premiership and gone on to win the premiership. So history isn't on Manly's side. But if they can do this, if they can go, past Week 1 of the finals, if they can win the premiership, they are the most dominant side in SRL history. Facts. No doubt about it, in my opinion. It's definitely the most dominant season in SRL history. Let's talk Will Kay and Joshua Butterfield. We talked about them a little bit earlier in the pod. They backed them. Kyle Lewis benched. Is it the right call? I think Kyle will come on and play hooker. Bo Sadler will move to lock. I love Bo Sadler in that role, moving from hooker to lock. But I just don't know if Kyle Lewis should be on the bench. They might prove me wrong, but I'm just not sure. I don't really know who you'd replace with Butterfield or Kay. Butterfield's done the job all year, but Will Kay had a absolutely just stunning performance against the Cowboys. He was really, really strong. Now, as for the Warriors, Logan Strange, he's off the bench again. He's got a really good team-first mentality. We all know how good of a bloke Logan Strange is. But his impact off the bench was a game changer for the Warriors. I honestly think he's one of the biggest contributors to them actually winning that entire game. Winning that contest. So they deserve huge raps for taking a big risk. Logan Strange is one of the better players in the SRL. And he went, no, we're dropping you to the bench. And he said, righto, let's do this. And he provided such a good spark, such a good impact. My prediction, I'm going to say, because I actually messed up my ladder prediction, right? I told Chaz Dingo, who did my graphic, that I wanted the Warriors in 4th and the Broncos in 5th. But I actually think the Broncos are going to beat the Rabbitohs. And because of that, the Warriors need to beat Manly if they want to make finals. So I'm going to tip the upset. Warriors 1-12. I feel an upset brewing, and I think Manly are going to take advantage over. I think the Warriors are just going to take advantage. I'm really excited to see how they play. Next game, I'm going to try and race through this. As I said, guys, I want to get into my ladder prediction, which won't take long, but also the Q&A. I don't want this podcast to be too long. I don't want you guys sitting around. It's going to get boring hearing me yabber on for much longer. It's already been going for 51 minutes, so we do need to wrap this up. The Eels, they take on the Cowboys. The Cowboys are outplayed by a classy Manly outfit, but they showed they could take it to the top teams. Parramatta this season have not been a top team, unfortunately, but they did test Manly Parramatta. That's something to keep in mind. Of course, it was a different Manly side to what the Cowboys played, but Parramatta tested them on paper by the scoreline more than the Cowboys did. The Cowboys' discipline let them down last week, and I think the Eels, they've just got to make this an absolute dogfight. Just be niggly and just frustrate the Cowboys, just like Manly did. That was the Cowboys' undoing, is that they just got frustrated. It was a niggly affair. Chris Lord spent some time in the sin bin. So, that's how I think they should approach this game. They were lucky to win against Penrith last week. Chris Lord has been suspended, so he moves to the bench. Thomas Wallace shifts to lock and Kieran Wells to hooker. Columbus has been moved to the bench with Kobe Johnston to start at centre. I'm not too sure about the centre change, but I think they have made the right call. I think Kieran Wells deserves a start. He's been really good off the bench for the Cowboys. As for the Eels, Eli Barnes, the brand new Raider, he's back at fullback, which is an interesting decision. Shelford's moved to the halves. Shelford's leaving at the end of the year, obviously, but I think he's been doing a good job there, Damien, and I would have kept him there personally. My prediction, obviously talk the Eels up, and I think they can frustrate the Cowboys a little bit, but I think they'll just be way too strong. I think Cowboys will win this game 13+ and stamp their authority again on the competition. Penrith Panthers, they take on my Canberra Raiders. The Raiders, they've got slim finals hope. Penrith have nothing to lose. That's dangerous. Nothing to lose teams are dangerous, and Penrith has been dangerous for every team they've played since they bowed out of finals contention. The Raiders, the slim finals hopes, we've just got to win. It's as simple as that. We've made some mass changes. I've moved to Jack O'Neill, myself, has moved to fullback. Mark Iron to the bench. Corey Bell has moved to centre. Morrison to the wing. Sonny Tyre will start in the halves. Fitu to the bench due to injury. Wally Allen has been moved to lock. Malchus has been benched, and Ben Arnold to start. I think this one's a combination of needing to make change and building to the future, because we should have made change earlier in the season, in my opinion. I think we let ourselves down by not doing that. But I think with Luke Malchus leaving, Ben Arnold's going to have a bigger role at the club, so we thought we'd give him a start. Wally Allen's earned a start. He's worked so hard this season, all off the bench, so he's earned that role. Tyre and I switching, and Mark Iron going to the bench. I'm happy with that decision. I think that after my performance, which was just absolutely shocking against South Sydney, I needed to make a change. There needed to be a change, so they've simplified my role, going back to fullback, and I'm keen for that. I'm keen to see how I go there. And the Bell to centre, I think that's probably a good decision. He's been making some defensive errors on the wing, so I think centre might be just a bit of a simpler role for him. whereas Morrison will provide a bit of speed in the backfield. As for the Panthers, Lachlan Martin's been moved to the bench due to his injury, so Simon Hunt moves to lock. And, I was I'm a bit curious on why Jordan Williams wasn't moved to 13 personally. I think that's his best position, but could prove me wrong. Ollie Pace is going to start in the front row for the first time, I believe, which is really good for him. So congratulations to Ollie. Good work. He's worked hard all season. He's had some really good games, actually, Ollie Pace, and he's earned this debut. Starting debut, sorry. My prediction, you know what? I'm going to tip Penrith 1-12. I think that they're in their season on the high. They've got nothing to lose. They're just going to be committed. They're going to go out there and they're just going to scrap for everything. And I think that the pressure's going to get to Canberra. I think we're just waiting for those new signings now to take us to that next level next season. Last game of the round, the Broncos take on South Sydney. This is must win for the Broncos, especially if the Warriors lose. If the Warriors lose this, all they have to do is win. If the Warriors lose against Manly, all Broncos have to do is win, and they take fourth. The Rabbitohs, they haven't been convincing this season at all. Virtually the whole season, they just have not been able to string a really consistent performance together, in my opinion. But they've got a performance to just make a big statement right before finals. They're just about safe for finals too, I believe. So Jason Farah, he has shifted to lock. Cherry Evans dumped for Jack Cahill. Cash has been benched due to injury. I like Jason Farah at lock. I think it's an interesting change. Not sure if it's going to pay off, but I think it's just a change for Jason and just for the team. So I'm excited to see how he goes there. As for Cherry Evans being dumped for Jack Cahill, like I said, I wish they'd just pick and stick with the halves, but I think Jack Cahill is the right guy to be in the halves with Levi Raymond. As for South, the side remains consistent. They barely made any changes all year because they've just got the job done or thereabouts. So for me, my prediction, I think the Broncos are going to upset them. I think the Broncos are going to win this game 1-12. Big call, but I've just got a feeling about these upsets. I just think the Broncos and the Warriors are really going to get up this round. And Penrith, I think the Cowboys will beat Eels. So it's not going to be a week of upsets, but I do think 3 out of 4 games, the favourites will lose. That is my round 7 preview. I'm really pumped for this round. I'm excited to get into finals. But without further ado, it's time to go through my ladder prediction. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see on screen, I have got my final prediction of the Season 3 ladder. I think Manly will finish in first. I think regardless if they beat they're clear. We don't need to get into it. Same as the Cowboys, they aren't going to drop out a second. This is where things get a bit interesting. I think the Rabbitohs will finish in third. I think the Broncos are going to beat the Rabbitohs, but I still think they'll finish in third position. Meanwhile, the Warriors, I think they will finish in fourth. I'm just going to check the ladder, because something has just dawned on me to do with for and against. The Warriors, if they win... Well, this needs to be changed. One change I will make to this. I'm sorry. The Rabbitohs and the Warriors will switch. The simple reason being, if the Warriors beat Manly, like I'm tipping them to beat them, then they will finish in third, which is pretty massive because then they'll get the home final against South Sydney. But yeah, I think that the Warriors will actually finish third. The Rabbitohs will finish in fourth because I think they'll get upset by the Broncos, who will finish fifth. Their for and against just isn't good enough to get them in finals. Unfortunately, that start to the season has just let them down. I think the Raiders, even though I tipped Penrith to beat us, I don't see Parramatta winning, which means that Canberra will stay in sixth. The Eels will finish at 7th, and the Penrith Panthers will finish in 8th position in a pretty disappointing season for those bottom 4 teams. Without further ado now, I'm going to go through a Q&A. Yes, here we are with another Q&A. I love doing these with you guys. We've got 21 responses. Thank you everyone who got involved. I'm not going to answer every single one because, I can't get through them all, and a lot of the time, a lot of them are stupid anyway, so let's get straight into this. I'm not going to try to spend too much time on this. As I said, it's been a long podcast, But the first question, are we seeing Mark Irons' career decline, and what team could help save him from being pushed out of the league? I want to say his career's declined, but it's definitely gone backwards this season. But to be honest, there's not many Raiders players whose career haven't. To be honest, it's been a pretty disappointing season from a Canberra point of view. Excuse me. But I love his signing with the Broncos, and the Broncos should love that signing too. That's a really good pickup for them. I think that he has potential if he's going to go play 5'8" along Levi Raymond. He could be buyer of the season next year, so definitely don't count out Marky Iron. I think he's got a big future. Ash Crutcher is on the move. Where can you see him going? I'm going to go Penrith. I'm not sure why. Do you think Manly can go through undefeated? Yeah, I reckon they can. But I've also tipped the Warriors this week, so we'll see what happens. But they're still my premiership favourites by far and for sure. Who is the best player in the SRL at the moment? Chaz Dingo is the obvious one, isn't it? It's the one that everyone would say. I'm going to go Matthew Harris. He's a guy that I'm really impressed with this season. As well, he's becoming one of the best forwards in the league. He's a really good tackle breaker at the moment as well. Do you think the top four will stay as it is right now? Yes, the only change that I think will happen is the Warriors move up to third and the Rabbitohs will drop down to fourth. Who would be in your team of the week? Oh, I haven't made one off the top of my head. I think Chaz would probably still be full. No, Brody Kennedy. Brody Kennedy being the fullback jersey on the wings. Oh, Jesus, has really been sprung on me. I'll go through my top performers. Jacob Morrison. No, he'd be in the centres, Jacob. Nico Arateri, I think he played on the wing. I'll chuck him in there. And I'll say Jacob Morrison, centre of the week, because why not? In the halves, Will Kay as the half of the week. Hooker of the week. Mark Lee. I should not have even attempted this. I should probably try and do my team of the week. I'll definitely try and bring that in. I might do a team of the year next week, actually. Stay tuned for that. Player of the round. I'm going to go Will Kay. I thought he was really strong. Cowboys, pretenders or contenders? I'm going to go contenders. I think that they're building nicely, and I think that they're going to prove why they're really good in the finals. I think they're really going to lift when the finals come around. Do you think we will see the Bulldogs added in the SRL? I know Attila Centerdag from Para really wants to captain that team. I don't know. Like, I'd love to see the Bulldogs. I'm not a Bulldogs. I'm not a number one fan. Like, I'm obviously a Raiders fan, but they're probably my second team because of my dad. But, I'd love to see them in the SRL, but no one's even thinking about expansion at the top of the SRL with Logan Strange at the moment. It's not even on the table. Without holding back or sugarcoating it, anything, who is your most hated SRL team and why? I love all the teams, like, genuinely. There's no one that I'm like, I just want to beat them. I'd love to beat South, but I love South. I love those boys. They're my former club. I have so many great memories of that club. I get on with everyone. I like everyone. I like every team. Except for Logan Strange, that guy's a douchebag. Which player would you enjoy playing with the most that you haven't already? And if you were to ever leave Canberra, which team would you want to go to that you value as great? Loaded question. It's a player that I want to play with. Logan Strange. Nah, let's call him a douchebag. Now I'm saying I wanted to play with him. Chance Bunce. That's a guy I'd love to play with. Buncey. Tyler Amatagi. There's some guys. Chris Lord. Oh, yeah, Chris Lord. That's a guy I would love to just rip in with. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Eli Barnes is coming to the club, but he was a guy I've always wanted to play with, so that's that. And as for a team I would leave, which team would I want to go to that I value as great? I'm honestly open to every club, in the sense, I love Canberra, don't get me wrong, but I will never count out any clubs. Never club, I'm not going to that club. Because every club has got a lot of potential and a lot of good people around it. I guess I'd say Manly simply because they're really good and premiership favourites. So it's probably my best chance of winning a premiership. But that being said, I think Canberra are building really well for next season. I think we can make a good push. Yeah. Cowboys, maybe. But I guess the most likely one would be going back to Souths. Just because, I have a connection with that club and with the people there and with the community and the fans. What do the Broncos need to do to be finals contenders? I said it so many times in the podcast, I'm not going to lay into them again, but I think they need a stable halves combination. I think Levi Raymond and Mark Irons should be the halves combination next season. Do you reckon one day we'll have 10 teams? I hope so, but it's not a priority. Do you think you'll ever go to the Broncos in the future? Would never rule it out, but definitely not in my plans at the moment. Is it physically possible for Jesse Bennett to score a try outside 10 metres from the line? He loves a try from 10 metres out. Jesse Bennett, he is a one strong hombre. By how much will Manly win the grand final by? I think they will win the grand final. Like, I know this is obviously probably Matthew Harris or Kane Champ McKenny, but I think they'll probably win. I'm going to say they'll win by 2. I think they'll beat the Cowboys in the grand final. But the Warriors are my sneaky guy, wants to make the grand final. Is Isaac Simons one of the best centres in the SRL? No. Or wingers? No. But he's performing. He performed last week. I want to see it consistently and over a long period of time. Do you think the dynasty Manly have created will ever be matched or beaten? Currently on an 11-match winning streak, including finals in the trial. It's not a dynasty yet. And I ain't a dynasty until you win a premiership, boys. Come back to me when you've won a grand final. Because we could say the same thing about Broncos in season 1. Oh, they're building a dynasty there. They bowed out in the first week of the finals. Then they missed the finals in season 2, and they're probably going to miss it in season 3. Parramatta, you say it's a dynasty in season 2, we're building a dynasty. No, they've missed the finals. Oh, will most likely miss the finals. So, it's not a dynasty till they've won a premiership. Once they've won a premiership, I'll go back on my words and I'll say if I think they're a dynasty and if it'll ever be created or matched, because this could happen again. Honestly, 7 games is not a long time. It's not like we're playing 20-round seasons and they've gone all 20 rounds undefeated. They've gone 6 rounds undefeated. Oh, plus games last season as well, obviously. Oh, you know what? They have won a premiership, haven't they? But that was last season. They haven't won this season. Last season they won. I think they lost in round 5 to us, and then round 6, round 7, finals week 1. They won 4 matches in a row. We've seen that plenty of times in the SRL. Whereas now, they've won 6 matches in a row, 7 if you count the trial, obviously. If they go through and they win the grand final, and then you go with last year's grand final, yeah, it's a dynasty. But they have to win this grand final before I go dynasty, rather than just premiership winning team. Last question. Who do you think is the best forward in the SRL right now, excluding hookers? Matthew Harris. I think he's probably one of the better players in the SRL this season as well. But that's going to do it for today's podcast, guys. Thank you, everybody who was involved. Make sure you hit me up in the comments on suggestions and, smash me if I've said something stupid. I'm happy to have constructive conversations with you in the comments or on the Discord. But I have been Jack O'Neill. I will see you next week. Goodbye.